You look fine, but you're exhausted. You do everything right, smile at everyone, meet all expectations, but you don't feel anything anymore. And the scariest part? You've gotten used to functioning without a soul. No one notices. But you know, something inside you is dying, and that death doesn't come from the outside. It comes from every yes you gave when you wanted to say no. From every time you silenced your anger, swallowed your tears, played the part. This isn't just a phase, it's betrayal. Silent, daily, disguised as kindness. Carl Jung called it the persona, the role you created to be accepted. The problem? The role stuck. And now you don't know where the act ends and where you begin. But breathe, because maybe this video is exactly your breaking point. Today, you'll understand why you keep betraying yourself, why it's become an invisible cycle, and how the ego, the shadow, and the unconscious all work together to lead you back to your soul. But only if you have the courage to see what you've always pretended not to. This video won't flatter you. It will strip you bare. There's a kind of yes that doesn't come from your mouth. It slips out from your soul. It's the yes spoken with a smile, but echoing like a silent scream inside. The body agrees, but the consciousness pulls back, and that's where deep disconnection begins. The ego bows to a social script, while the self watches silently and wounded. Carl Jung understood that the ego must engage with the world, yes, but when it constantly submits to others' desires, the cost is high. The cost is self-betrayal. Sounds dramatic, but it's not. A misplaced yes can be the start of a life that isn't yours. The most dangerous part, this detour rarely hurts all at once. It eats away slowly, quietly, in the details, in the repetition. Many people live this way, pleasing by instinct, smiling on reflex, saying sure when everything inside them wants to scream no, please. Why? Because they were conditioned to believe that being good means being available, helpful, agreeable. That spirituality is infinite patience and limitless understanding. But it's not. True spirituality is integrity. It's knowing where you end and the other begins. When you start saying yes to everything, it's not kindness, it's fear. Fear of rejection, of judgment, of not being loved. The ego craves acceptance, the persona craves applause, and without realizing it, the soul is pushed into the basement of consciousness, hidden, silenced. Shadow work becomes inevitable because there comes a point when the pain of pleasing outweighs the short-term relief of being accepted. Practically speaking, it's more subtle than it seems. It's not about screaming no to the world or becoming rude. It's about pausing for 5 seconds before responding. It's about noticing if your body tightens when you agree to something. It's about asking yourself, am I doing this for me? Or just to avoid someone else's discomfort? A simple pause can reveal a whole universe of built-up denial. And this is where self-awareness becomes essential. Carl Jung would say that this pause is the moment when the unconscious offers you an invitation. Will you stay on autopilot or start listening to yourself? Whoever accepts that invitation has already unknowingly begun the true process of individuation, the one that requires choosing yourself above all else. And look, this shift isn't easy, because the world applauds those who obey. Society rewards those who serve without question. But eventually, even the most accommodating people realize they're exhausted, and they don't know why. That's where the real danger lies. Because soul fatigue isn't cured by sleep. It's a spiritual depletion, an inner erosion caused by years of micro-betrayals. Saying yes when you wanted to say no is a form of self-abandonment. And when abandonment becomes a habit, the unconscious starts charging you, and the price is steep. That's exactly when the mask starts to stick to your skin. And that's when the second chapter of the journey begins to reveal itself. The persona starts as protection, but ends as a prison. At first, it's just a harmless disguise, a way to avoid conflict, to please, to fit in. You learn to smile even when something is tearing you up inside. You learn to soften your voice, hold back your gestures, hide your discomfort, until one day you forget who you were without all that control. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, it's sneaky. And that's why it's so dangerous. Carl Jung said the persona is a social function, but when the ego clings to it as if it were identity, the soul begins to die. Not with a bang, but through repeated silences, suppressed desires, unspoken truths. That's how the mask begins to fuse with your skin, and you don't even notice. From the outside, the image is flawless. You're praised, trusted, efficient. The world applauds, but applause doesn't fill you, because inside, you feel it. Something's wrong. A quiet emptiness, a constant sense of disconnection. Nothing really touches you anymore. You respond, but you don't feel. You participate, but you're absent. The ego tries to keep things in order, but the self starts knocking, and the more you perform, the more you fade. Spirituality becomes performance, love becomes approval, life becomes theater. At this point, shadow work isn't a choice, it's urgent, because you can't live whole while playing a role. You know that person who never complains, never cries, never loses it? Watch out for them. Watch out for yourself if you're becoming them. That artificial stability isn't balance, it's a controlled collapse. Behind the exemplary behavior lives a soul exhausted from not existing. And that kind of exhaustion doesn't heal with vacations, it heals through confrontation. Jung never spoke of healing without pain, he spoke of wholeness. And to be whole, you must face the lie you told to survive. The lie that being accepted is worth more than being real. It's in that crack between how you live and how you feel that the first signs of collapse begin. Fatigue without cause, irritability, insomnia, depersonalization. The cruelest part? No one notices. You're doing everything. You're smiling, you're functioning. But inside, you no longer know where the mask ends and you begin. The persona has become skin, and now it bleeds. Carl Jung knew when the ego fuses with the persona, it pushes the self away. And when the self is pushed away, emptiness takes over. But that emptiness isn't the end. It's a calling, a signal that it's time to stop pretending. The question is, will you keep pretending to believe in the character, or will you face the emptiness that can finally lead you back to yourself? Because what comes after the emptiness is even scarier. It's when applause is no longer enough. No one tells you this, but there's a kind of emptiness that only shows up when everything seems to be going well. When you're admired, respected, recognized, and still, something inside you whispers, "This isn't living." It's the hardest emptiness to explain because it hides behind success, behind applause, behind the polite smile you offer, while deep down you feel absolutely nothing. Carl Jung saw this as a symptom of disconnection between the ego and the self. The ego may be on top, but if the soul isn't with it, it's all just cardboard scenery. And the cruelest part? The more praise you receive, the harder it is to admit that you're dying inside. Because who would dare say they're unhappy when they seem to have it all? This emptiness doesn't show up suddenly. It begins with tiny concessions, with desires silenced, with automatic replies. It feeds on your absence from yourself. Eventually, even compliments stop landing. People say you're amazing, but you feel nothing. You smile, but there's no spark. It's like living inside a body that's been unplugged. At that point, spirituality isn't just inspiring content, it becomes a raw necessity. Because this kind of emptiness can't be filled with more achievements. It only dissolves with more presence. Shadow work isn't an esoteric ritual. It's looking into the mirror and asking with courage, is this applause for who I am, or for who I pretend to be? Want a real-world example? Look at the artist who reaches fame but spirals into depression at the peak. The successful professional who feels no purpose. The mother who loves her kids but lost her own name in the process. These people are living the emptiness behind the applause. Because the world claps for the role but ignores the soul behind it. And when the soul is ignored, it gets sick. Carl Jung said that illness is nature's way of healing. Maybe the exhaustion you feel isn't a flaw, but a calling, a plea from your unconscious asking you to come home. And home in this case isn't a place, it's a state of truth. Here's the trap. Applause is addictive. Being validated by the external gives you dopamine, a quick hit of reward, but it drains you. Because you have to keep topping yourself, keep the role alive. It becomes a race with no finish line. And the soul doesn't race, it watches, it whispers, and when it's not heard, it goes silent. But its silence is through symptoms, through illness, through identity crises no one understands. The ego resists, the persona masks it, but the self waits. And when silence becomes pain, that's the sign it's time to stop everything, to interrupt the performance. To face the invisible rebellion that's starting to rise, because that's when the unconscious steps in, and it doesn't knock. There comes a moment when the body starts to say what the soul was never allowed to. Anxiety appears out of nowhere. Sleep disappears. Appetite changes. Your chest tightens. Tears come out of nowhere, and no one understands. Doctors say everything looks fine. Tests don't show anything. But inside, something is screaming. Carl Jung called this psychic compensation. When the ego strays too far from wholeness, the unconscious steps in. But it doesn't send an email. It speaks through symptoms, through dreams, strange impulses, unexplained sensations. That's how rebellion begins. Subtle, silent, symbolic. It's not the end. It's the soul's desperate attempt to restore lost balance. While the ego tries to protect the image, the unconscious starts sabotaging the script. You snap over little things, cry over nonsense, feel out of place where you once felt safe. What once felt stable now suffocates you, and that's not weakness. It's a sign that something inside you refuses to keep living the lie. This is where spirituality becomes a language of reconnection. It's not about escaping pain, it's about listening to it. The shadow starts to move when it can no longer stand being ignored. And shadow work shows up as a necessary, almost brutal process of inner excavation. Because what you don't express becomes expression. What you silence turns into chaos. A common example is recurring dreams. You're trying to escape. You scream and no one hears. You're naked in public, trapped with no way out. None of this is random. They're symbolic signals from an unconscious in distress. Nudity reveals the self's exposure. Prison symbolizes the persona as a cage. Mute screams reflect chronic silencing of your will. And when you ignore these signs, the unconscious turns up the volume. It goes from whisper to scream, and that scream often shows up as a crisis, panic attacks, burnout, emotional collapse. It's not punishment, it's a cry for healing. Carl Jung would say, what you resist persists, and what you face transforms. But the problem is, we were taught to ignore, to rationalize everything, to take a pill, to move on. True spirituality demands the opposite, to stop, to feel, to listen. Because the unconscious doesn't disappear when ignored, it grows, and the more you suppress, the louder it expresses. Relationships start falling apart. Addictions appear out of nowhere. Compulsions with food, social media, shopping, work. All of it could be your unconscious trying to say, hey, you forgot me. And that inner rebellion only quiets when it's heard. Because what comes after it is the most dangerous descent of all, the confrontation with the kind of soul that most often gets abandoned. Not all suffering is the same, and not every wound is visible. Carl Jung knew that the way each person breaks down reveals a lot about their inner structure. Among the many psychological types he described, there's one with a particular vulnerability: the extroverted feeling type. It's the one who lives turned outward, who picks up on expectations, senses atmospheres, reads the room as if their emotional survival depends on it, because it does. External approval becomes oxygen. Other people's affection becomes a measure of self-worth. And yes becomes a compulsion. Not because this person is weak, but because their psychic structure was built on reflection, not essence. And living in reflection means slowly fading away, even under bright lights. This type doesn't ask, "What do I feel?" They ask, "What will people think?" They don't ask if they want to, they ask if they should. And that should becomes internal law, even when it hurts. They believe being loved is the same as being pleasant, helpful, available. So they adapt. They erase themselves, they mold themselves. They're the kind of person who listens to everyone, but can't hear themselves. Who comforts, advises, supports, but doesn't know how to ask for help. Who smiles while bleeding inside. And this self-erasure, done in the name of goodness, comes at a steep price. Because constantly pleasing others isn't virtue, it's addiction. Spirituality isn't about being useful, it's about being truthful. And when usefulness becomes identity, the soul starts to go silent. You know someone like this. Maybe it's you, the one who always says yes, never complains, is always there when needed, praised for their kindness, but emotionally drained. Someone who feels guilty just for wanting time alone, who confuses love with being needed. This kind of soul built its identity so entirely around others, it forgot what it likes, what it wants, what it feels. Carl Jung reminds us, the ego needs to be grounded in an inner base, but this person built their base in the external, in expectations, in glances, in applause. And when the external fails, the ground vanishes, and everything collapses inside, silently. The worst part, that collapse doesn't come with clear warning signs. It shows up as irritability, as inexplicable exhaustion, as sudden crying, as a constant sense of not belonging, neither to others nor to oneself. Because this type was never taught to self-reference. They live from the outside in, not from the inside out. Shadow work in this case is like a rescue surgery, painful but vital. You have to gather the forgotten pieces of yourself, name what was denied, confront the guilt that holds you back. And this doesn't happen overnight. It's reconstruction, a return, a deep reconfiguration of the ego toward the self. And that process begins exactly when the signs can no longer be ignored. The soul doesn't stay silent forever. It just changes languages. And when you won't listen to what you feel, it starts speaking in other ways. Weird dreams, unexplained exhaustion, quiet compulsions, constant irritability, insomnia, a feeling of suffocation. Carl Jung called this the symbolic language of the unconscious. It doesn't come with subtitles, it doesn't come with logic. It comes with discomfort. The ego, desperate for order, tries to deny it, says it's just a phase, that it's stress, but the self knows. It sends repeated signals, not to punish you, but to rescue you. Because the unconscious is like an internal alarm. The more you insist on living outside yourself, the louder it rings. And if you still don't listen, it starts to scream. These signs are subtle at first. A dream that won't leave you, a sadness that lingers, an aching body without a cause, a desire to disappear even when everything seems fine. You try to distract yourself, stay busy, get more done, seek advice, read books, but nothing fills the void. Because what's asking for space isn't outside, it's inside. It's the shadow knocking at the door. And the shadow, when ignored, takes over, not to destroy you, but to force you to look. True spirituality begins when you stop asking for signs from the universe and start decoding the signs your unconscious sends every day. They're there. They've always been there. You just pretended not to see them. That urge to binge eat, to shop compulsively, to scroll endlessly through social media video series. Often it's not boredom. It's escape. Escape from silence. Escape from presence. Escape from yourself. Carl Jung said the unconscious tries to compensate for the split between who you are and how you live. And when you disconnect too far from your truth, it acts through other channels. The body, for example, starts expressing what the psyche suppresses. Pain without cause. Illness that lingers, tension that won't release. These aren't isolated problems, they're existential symptoms. The soul found the only way to be heard in a world that doesn't give it a voice. And still, you push through. Stronger coffee, more tasks, another fake smile on top of pain, because that's what you were taught. To be strong is to endure, to never show weakness, to keep moving, even when you don't know where to. But the soul doesn't follow social codes. It follows truth. And when truth is ignored, it gets sick. At this point, spirituality isn't a pretty idea. It's a path home, a call to stop, to feel, to truly listen. And real listening hurts, because sometimes what the soul is saying is exactly what you've spent your whole life trying not to hear. And when that moment comes, there's no turning back. Truth doesn't come with flowers. It slips in through the cracks, quietly, and tears down what you spent years trying to hold together. Truth has no urgency, but it's relentless. When it hits, it brings collapse. And that collapse, that symbolic breakdown, is more spiritual than any prayer. Carl Jung knew, before the light comes the fall, the disintegration of the ego, the collapse of the persona, the end of the performance, because there is no individuation without ruin, and that ruin is internal. It's the moment you look in the mirror and no longer believe what you see. The name is still the same, the voice still familiar, but nothing feels real anymore, because living as a facade has an expiration date, and when it runs out, you sink. The fall hurts because it shatters your certainties, who you thought you were, what you believed in, the identity you clung to. It all collapses. And the despair doesn't just come from the pain, it comes from the emptiness, a brutal existential void that swallows what's left. Toxic spirituality will call this low vibration. Yes, but true spirituality will look you in the eye and say, finally. Because it's only at rock bottom that you stop negotiating with your persona. Only in the ruin does the self begin to rise, not as mystical light, but as the raw residue of everything that remains once the lies are gone. It's there, in the dust of your collapse, that truth begins. And the cruelest part, the fall is invisible. No one sees that you're falling. You keep smiling, working, functioning. But inside, there's no structure left. The soul is collapsing, the ego is in denial, and the shadow is smiling, because now it has space. What was repressed begins to surface, and you can't hold it back anymore. The choked rage, the silenced desire, the disguised fear. It all rises like lava, and you're no longer in control, because the soul is done being polite, done waiting. Shadow work now isn't an option. It's raw flesh, a direct confrontation with everything you pretended not to be. And the more you run, the faster you sink. Carl Jung called this the individuation crisis, the moment the ego is challenged to surrender, because if it doesn't, it breaks. And what breaks? Cuts ties, cuts illusions, cuts roles, cuts everything that was never truly you. And the pain isn't soft, it's surgical. But that pain cleans, it opens, it transforms. This collapse is what pulls the soul out of the basement. The fall isn't punishment, it's preparation. Because what comes next isn't performance anymore, It's living shadow, raw impulse, everything you avoided facing in yourself. And now, standing among the shards, there's only one choice left. Will you deny what's been revealed, or walk through what lives inside you? You thought the fall was the worst part, but it's not. The worst part comes after. When you realize you didn't fall into a hole, you fell into yourself. And down there in the dark, in the silence without a map, is everything you swore you weren't. The shadow isn't a monster, it's memory, it's instinct, it's forgotten impulse. It's the part of you that had to be locked away so the persona could survive. Carl Jung said, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." But awakening is brutal because it forces you to see what you've spent your life rejecting. Your envy, your rage, your pride, your need for control, your emotional dependency, your subtle manipulation. Everything you swore you didn't have is there. And facing that hurts because it demands brutal humility. It requires dismantling your narratives, opening old wounds, revisiting traumas you swore you had already healed. Shadow work isn't poetic. It's dirty, it's visceral, it's uncomfortable, but it's real. And when you accept the descent, something shifts. The soul begins to stir, not because it found light, but because it found truth. And truth heals, even when it burns. Spirituality that doesn't go through the shadow is just a distraction. It's escape disguised as elevation. It's ego wrapped in pretty words. Jung knew this. That's why he spoke of individuation, the process of integrating all parts, including the ones you fear the most. Because only those who embrace the monster discover it was just a wounded child in disguise. But beware, the shadow isn't integrated through pretty phrases. It demands presence. It demands that you stop justifying yourself, that you stop blaming the world, that you stop running from your psychic responsibility. The journey through the shadow begins when you admit, "I created this persona, and only I can dismantle it." That's when you stop looking for someone to blame and start gathering the pieces, not in a rush, not in desperation, but with dignity. Carl Jung taught that what you don't acknowledge in yourself, you project onto others. In other words, everything that irritates you, everything that fascinates you, everything that controls you is a mirror. And only those who dare to look at that mirror unfiltered begin the real journey inward. And that journey is solitary. Not because you're alone, but because no one can do it for you. It's a silent pact between you and your soul. The persona screams, the ego resists, the shadow provokes, but the self whispers. And those who learn to hear that whisper begin to feel something new. Strength. Not the strength to win, but the strength to hold what you feel. To remain whole, even when fragmented. Because walking with your shadow isn't about getting rid of it. It's about learning to walk with it beside you instead of behind you. And when that journey begins, something inside you finally remembers the way home. Not back to who you were, but to who you may never have dared to become after the fall. After the collapse, after the mirror shatters, it's there, in the silence that follows the crash, that you hear a new sound, a fragile but pulsing sound, a whisper that never left, just buried beneath the rush, the mask, the fear. That whisper is you, not the trained, polished, adapted version, but the you who feels before thinking, who wants before asking permission, who exists even when no one's watching. Carl Jung called this the reunion with the self. And it's not like going home. It's like realizing you've never lived there, that you spent your whole life as a character, and now, finally, you're touching the skin of your soul. This return comes with no manual, no map. It's more intuition than certainty, more presence than answers. You begin to move through sensations that don't explain themselves, but don't lie. You realize peace doesn't come from what's pretty, but from what's true. That it's not about fitting in, it's about aligning. And alignment often requires rupture. It asks you to say no where you always said yes, to walk away from places you once longed to be accepted, to defy the expectations you helped create. Because returning to your soul isn't comfortable, it's radical and deeply solitary. But it's in that solitude that you find the only company that never left you, yourself. And something shifts. You no longer crave the approval that once enslaved you. You no longer feel the need to please, to prove, to hold everything together, because now you know your presence is enough. And for the first time, you breathe, not like someone surviving, but like someone truly inhabiting their body. The ego is still there, but it no longer rules. The persona still exists, but it no longer cages you. The shadow still visits, but it no longer scares you. There's a new coherence, a silent one, growing inside you. And this coherence doesn't come from outside. It's not a reflection, it's a center. It's the soul reclaiming its place. And when it does, nothing fits like it used to. Because now you know what used to make you function was keeping you from truly living. But be warned, returning to the soul isn't a destination, it's a process, a continuous unfolding, a constant remembering, because the world will try to pull you back, the persona will want to return, the ego will beg for safety. But now you have a new reference, now you've tasted wholeness, and that taste is addictive. Spirituality here is no longer a concept, it's a practice. It's a daily choice not to abandon yourself, even when it hurts, even when it costs you, even when no one understands. Carl Jung said, "He who looks inside awakens." But he also knew, once you awaken, you never sleep peacefully again, because the awakened soul demands loyalty. And loyalty to your soul is a heavy price to pay after years of betrayal. There's a kind of peace that makes no noise. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or promises of eternal bliss. It comes quietly after the pain, after the fall, after the long walk through the shadow. It's the peace that comes from reunion, not with some spiritual idea, but with something raw, dense, and real. With wholeness. And being whole doesn't mean being perfect. It means being truthful. It means feeling anger and not punishing yourself, feeling fear and not running, feeling love and not begging. Carl Jung said, individuation is the process of becoming who you are. And in that process, all excess falls away, all illusions crack, all personas turn to dust, and what's left is you. This peace feels strange at first because it doesn't excite you, it doesn't thrill you, it doesn't fill you like the old highs did. It just is. It holds you, it anchors you. It's the kind of peace that lets you sleep with no internal debt, that lets you say no without guilt, that lets you mess up without falling apart. It's not the absence of conflict, it's the absence of betrayal. You've stopped abandoning yourself. And that changes everything. Your presence changes, your gaze changes, your energy shifts. Because now you're not adapting to the world, you're showing up to it. Not as a character, but as a soul. And when the soul inhabits the body, it shuts down the script. Spirituality stops being theory. It becomes your way of existing. But don't be fooled, wholeness has a cost. It demands honest relationships, aligned decisions, the courage to lose what no longer nourishes you, silence to hear what really matters, and radical presence. Because living authentically is like walking against traffic. You feel everything more intensely. You notice the tension, the noise, the manipulation. What used to go unnoticed now cuts through you. But this sensitivity isn't weakness, it's a compass. It's the soul guiding you from within. And only someone who's whole can recognize when something violates that wholeness. Carl Jung said, "You'll only be able to face the outer world after conquering your inner one. And now, your inner world has an owner. That owner is you, not the you shaped to please. but the you who feels, who thinks, who messes up, who chooses. The you who exists without needing to explain, who no longer negotiates with emptiness, who no longer begs to be loved, who no longer silences the soul out of fear of losing connections. The peace of being whole doesn't come when everything's perfect. It comes when you stop splitting yourself, when you stop editing your truth, when you accept that living is risky and choose to live anyway. And that decision is a permanent return. Because once you've tasted this peace, you'll never again settle for half a life. And those who've known this wholeness understand inner silence is worth more than any approval, because the world may not understand you, but finally, you recognize yourself. You could leave this video pretending nothing touched you. You could go back to autopilot, back to the persona. You could keep smiling, producing, pleasing, while decaying in silence. Or you could admit, just to yourself, just for today, that this pain you carry isn't bad luck. It's the soul's scream you learn to silence. It's the bill that comes due every time you say yes and betray yourself. It's the price of living without inhabiting yourself. Carl Jung didn't promise ease, he promised wholeness. And wholeness hurts. It hurts because it demands severance, it demands loss. It demands letting go of what once protected you, but slowly killed you. So now I ask, since there's nothing left to distract you, what still ties you to the mask? How many pieces of yourself are you still willing to sacrifice just to be loved? How many versions of yourself will you bury before you choose the real one? If this video opens something in you, write, pour it out, let it go. A comment might be the start of your silent revolution. And if you want to keep going with people who aren't afraid of depth, subscribe, turn on notifications, and come with us. Because truth doesn't comfort, but it does set you free.